Hello, everybody, and welcome back to On the Diamond and Into the Deep. As always, I am your host, Mahal, and we are back today on Thursday, August 22nd. We are coming off the heels of a Mariners road trip that was truly and utterly a disaster. And as I said, it was potentially the road trip that could end their season, and it seems like it has. But in reaction, the Mariners have just announced, or it has just been leaked, per Ken Rosenthal, that the Mariners are firing Scott Servais, and in turn, they are hiring former Mariners catcher Dan Wilson as the Mariners manager for the rest of this year. You would like to say this is a shock. And while I'm honestly surprised knowing this Mariners organization, at the same time, I'm not surprised. And this makes a lot of sense. And Dan Wilson makes a lot of sense. But first, let's just talk about Scott Servais. And first and foremost, and really all that needs to be said is, thank you, Scott. You broke the drought. You had unbelievable energy that year. You brought a clubhouse together. You brought this team together for the organization that needed it. You brought us back to the postseason. And while you couldn't get us much farther than that, and you couldn't get us a division, you did what you could do. You made a name for yourself. You should have won AL Manager of the Year in 2021 and maybe even 2022. So thank you. And this should not go unheard. This should not go mentioned. This has to be said. But he is a good manager. The players liked him. The fans liked him. The front office liked him. People around the league like him. He's a likable manager. But it seemed like the energy, the fire that he had had in years past was gone this year. It didn't feel the same. Something felt different. And I hope that he's okay and that it's not something that lasts and he just goes to a new team and finds that energy again. But Scott, you did a wonderful job getting us through the rebuild and breaking the drought. And handing it over for now to Dan Wilson is awesome. It is awesome. And will this change a whole lot this season? Who knows? But as we get to Dan Wilson, what we know about him is that the players like him. He's a likable dude for the fans, for the players, for everybody. And it was time really for him to get a shot at this. Am I surprised it wasn't Christopher Negron or Manny Acta? Or maybe even Perry Hill? Yeah, for sure, a little bit. But you go replace one of hire one of those dudes. You go put in Manny Acta or Chris Negron, you're going to have to go find someone to be a base coach. And maybe you're better off just going to Dan Wilson, giving someone a little bit different, someone that hasn't been on the quote-unquote staff. A different voice, like truly a different voice. Obviously, it's probably not going to change him a lot in terms of approach, but maybe it can light a fire for this next week and a half when you really do have an opportunity to overtake the Astros. And you're going to be like, well, why do you say that? And I'll tell you right now why I say that. In terms of the Mariners' schedule coming up, and these are teams that the Mariners can and should be able to beat. But you should be able to win 2 of 3 against the Giants coming up this weekend at home. You also should be able to win 2 of 3 against Tampa. You also should be able to win 2 of 3 against the Angels. And then you should be able to split with the Oakland Athletics. That's what the Mariners should be able to do. And during that same stretch, the Houston Astros have a brutal stretch. You want to talk about this weekend? 4 against the Orioles, starting today. Then you got 3 against the Phillies, who are looking to get back on fire, and then 4 against a really hot and really good and pesky Royals team. And then they got the Reds for 3. but that's in Cincinnati. And the Reds are always pesky. They have some starters. They have Hunter Green. They have Ellie De La Cruz. They could go get you. But then following that up, you have 3 against the Diamondbacks, who are hotter than the sun. So that's a stretch starting tonight through September 8th. That's a tough stretch for Houston. It's a really tough stretch. And like I said, for the Mariners through September 8th, they got the Giants for 3, the Rays for 3, the Angels for 3, the A's for 4, and the Cardinals for 3. And during that period, they do have an off day. The Astros, on the other hand, they don't have an off day. Not tonight, not next week. That's all games in a row. That's a tough stretch. So now is the time you make the change, because this is now or never. It is do or die season. This is your chance to go make a change when really it's needed anyway, and it was likely going to happen at the end of the season no matter what. But you needed to make it now, because this is your last chance. And I'm not quite going to call the season over. Because you could go into this weekend very easily and you could win 2 of 3. The Astros could lose 2 of 3. You're 4 games back. You go do the same thing at the start of next week. Well, sorry. The Astros have a 4-game series. So let's go say the Astros now go lose 3 of 4. And you go win 2 of 3. You're picking up a game and a half. You're 3.5 back. It feels possible again. They go then to Philly. They drop 2 of 3. You win 2 of 3. You're 2.5 back. And you're right back into this thing. And you just got to get back into this thing. And can Dan Wilson do that? We'll see. Can he light a fire under this team? I really hope so. And I could see it happening. But that said, it still does suck. It really does suck. Because Scott Servais is awesome. I love the dude. 9 seasons with the Mariners. He was 680 and 642 with the team. But 2 of those seasons were truly drought years, or were truly rebuild years. But it's time. This is your opportunity. This is what you go do. And this is how you gotta react. But again, thank you, Scott Servais, for everything you have done. Now, what else does this show me, though? The Mariners believe they still can do this, maybe. Because if not, you would have just sat on your hands and knees for the rest of the season. You would have just kind of thrown it in the bag, let him finish it out. Maybe you get a high note, probably not. And it sucks to do this, it does. But you would have just waited till the off season, and then you blow everything up. But this also tells me that it doesn't feel like the front office is getting blown up this offseason. It feels like they're going to get a year or 2 more, and you're kind of going to see what a new coaching staff could do. And a very overhauled coaching staff at all would not surprise me. The question for me is, can you keep Pete Woodworth? Can you keep Pete Woodworth and the pitching guys, but go get a new face, new hitting side of all that, new approach to hitting, but keep your approach to pitching, keep all that. And I don't know if you can, because that's really hard to do. And the chance of you actually being able to do that is not very high. But if you can go do that, it could be a lot of fun. That's what you want for this team. You want this team to be fun again. Because when this team is fun, this podcast is fun, life is fun, everything else is fun. But this is huge news in Mariners land. Huge news. You have less than 40 games remaining, and you've done this. You know what it means. And I respect that they have the balls to do it when it's actually needed. Servais deserved up until this point. Maybe it could have been a week or 2 more. But he deserved, based on what he had done in 21 and 22, to be starting this year. He deserved that. But dropping 15 games in the standings in 2 months is that you can't keep your job after that. That can't stand. It is the biggest disaster one of the worst seasons, if not the worst season in Mariners history. Definitely the worst season that I personally remember. Worse than last year was. Worse than 18 or 15 was. This is the worst year the Mariners have had, and it's because of expectations. It's because of everything. But thank you, Scott Servais. You were a vibe. You were fun. It's hard not to like you because you were awesome. You were one of the nicest dudes you could have ever met, you could have ever talked to. You are one of the best managers, probably the second best manager in Mariners history, only after the great Lou Piniella. And hopefully you can just pass the reins to someone else that can finish the job for you and can go do what this franchise deserves and what maybe you weren't able to do this year. I think another underrated part of this, though, is the relationship Dan Wilson and Cal Raleigh have. Maybe this is the type of thing that you can go, really, Cal Raleigh will just love. And I'm sure he will. I'm sure a lot of the team will. Because a lot of team has been around Dan Wilson. They love Dan Wilson. He's the man. Dan the man. And can Dan the man lead this team to glory? One last postseason run for the boys. Can you do it, Dan? And maybe he can, maybe he can't. But either way, the true, meaning just of doing this is important in of itself. And that's what I find really awesome. I didn't think they were going to do it just because I didn't think that they were serious enough about winning to actually go do it. But they did it. They really did. And you're moving on. And as we move on, I want to talk about Jorge Polanco. You're going to be like, well, why do you want to talk about Jorge Polanco? And it's because I want to talk about Jorge Polanco's option for next year. Now, you're probably like, what? He has an option? And yeah, he does. He has a team option for next year worth $12 million. So, at this point, are you picking it up? And in my opinion, yeah, you definitely are. I don't think there's any doubt. And it's not necessarily even due to just the way he's played. And he's played really well lately. In the second half, he's been really, really good. It's been really good. But it's partially because I think it's a hole that you just need to have some stabilization. That's the most important thing, in my opinion. When you go to this offseason, you really need to upgrade a couple spots. And those are your corner infield spots. You must, with a capital M, upgrade your corner infield spots. Right? We all know this. And that's going to be all the more difficult to do if you don't keep Jorge Polanco around, and you then also have to go get a middle infielder. If you pick up that $12 million option on Polanco, that means your second base hole is filled for next year. And if he struggles, you have Cole Young waiting in the wings. But if you don't, you either have to go get someone or you're starting Ryan Bliss or Cole Young. And for a team that's wanting to make the postseason, you cannot rely on rookies to fill in for your team. You cannot have rookies starting from the get-go. Your rookies can be your depth. They can be your next option to call someone up. That's possible. But they shouldn't be starting on opening day for this team. They shouldn't. And as you get to the offseason, you want to be able to attack multiple very clear spots. And for me, those clear spots are the bullpen, number one. And maybe that's not necessarily going and getting someone big, but it's figuring out a way to sort of build a bridge. There was no bridge this year. That's been the problem all year. And you're going to need your bullpen to be better now, too. And will it be better? We'll see. But you're going to need it to be. That's going to be crucial. Not only do your bats need to be better, but your bullpen does, too. But like I was saying, as you approach this offseason, you have to get bullpen help. You really need a first baseman, and you really need a third baseman. And maybe if you can go get a truly, elite level third baseman, you can have Locklear starting at first base with him and Rayleigh. Maybe you can go do that. Like, that would be okay, but your third base has to be, like, set. You need, like, a really good third baseman. You need a middle of the order, top of the lineup third baseman that can come in and hit. But in terms of Jorge Polanco himself, he's been himself in the second half. He's got a WRC plus of 157. It's been 57% better than league average. He's got an OPS of 902, if that's the stat you want to look at. He's hitting 272, slugging 551. And maybe it hasn't been with all the homers that you would expect, but he's got 7 home runs in the second half. He's got 18 RBIs, which is equivalent to what he had in the first half. Like, he's been a lot better. And that's what you need from him. If you can get that next year, you could see huge things from him. And that's what you need. You need him to be huge for you. You need him to just be the dude he's been in his career. And if he can be that, then you're obviously picking up this option. And you have a set second baseman for next year in a position that hasn't been set since Robinson Cano left. Like, you need that in this organization. And I also think, in my opinion, he will be better in his second year in Seattle. That often happens with players that were at a specific place, or with one team for the majority or entirety of their career. Polanco had been with the Twins his entire career. He'd been with them since he was the age of 20. That's when he debuted. Like, that's a long time. It's a really long time. He's with them for 9 seasons. 9 seasons he was with them. That makes it difficult to come to a new place. And when that new place is Seattle, a place that's really hard to hit in, you're probably going to struggle at first. But it's how you can then perform after that. And I think he's kind of in for a big year next year. Just because he's performed so well in the second half, and he's starting to get more comfortable in this team, in this organization. And that's huge. That's massive. So in conclusion on Jorge Polanco, yes, I'm picking up the $12 million option, and I'm not thinking twice about it. And I think that should be the opinion of everyone. I really do. That should be the opinion of everybody. So as we close out today's episode, Scott Servais is gone. And I'm a little bit surprised, but I also really like the move. And it was what needed to happen. It really was. And I'll leave you with 2 points. Number 1, this next week and a half, from now until September 8th, so I guess it's really like 2 weeks. These next 2 weeks are crucial for your season, and they truly will decide your season. I mean, this next week will. If you don't do well this next week, or if the Astros just run off a run of games, like, you're done. But let's show some fire. Let's go do it. I'm a little bit excited to watch this team now again. Like, I feel a fire inside myself in terms of with this team now. And that's good. That's needed. You need the fire. And I'm not playing, but can the players get fire in them? Yeah, I hope so. We'll see tomorrow what it looks like. They face the Giants back at home. Maybe being back at home will do better too. But either way, go Mariners, y'all. Peace out. Love you, Scott Servais. Thank you for everything you did for this organization. You are appreciated. Peace.